Before I became a headline in my mother's nightmares. Before my father stopped using my name in conversations. Before my college ID card turned into evidence. I was just another middle-class Indian boy raised on expectations. My life didn't begin with rebellion. It began with pressure. I grew up in a 2-bedroom flat where silence meant success and noise meant failure. My father believed in order the way some men believe in God. Wake up early, study hard, don't ask unnecessary questions, respect elders, earn stability. Everything else was indulgence. My mother was softer, but in India softness often means suffering quietly. She covered my mistakes the way women of her generation are trained to, discreetly, efficiently, without ever letting them be seen. From the outside, we were a good family. Inside, we were fragile. I was the kind of student teachers liked until they didn't. Good marks in school, state board, decent rank, nothing extraordinary but enough to earn praise at family functions, enough to be compared favorably against cousins, enough for my father to believe his methods were working. College changed the scale. Suddenly, I was average. That is a brutal realization for someone raised on validation. At my college, one of those institutions that advertises holistic development but worships placement statistics, everything was political. Not just student elections, everything. Who got hostel rooms? Who got attendance leniency? Who got internal marks? Who got called problematic? You learned early that talent mattered less than alignment. There were groups on campus, not clubs, factions. There were the achievers, professors' favorites, always visible, always correct, always safe. There were the activists, loud, ideological, protected by optics. There were the invisible majority, students who kept their heads down and waited for life to begin after graduation. And then there were people like me. Drifting, not brave enough to fight the system, not disciplined enough to win inside it. I didn't feel seen in classrooms, but I felt noticed outside them. That mattered more than I admitted. My first year passed without drama. Second year brought confidence. Third year brought carelessness. Freedom is intoxicating when you've never had it. Moving out of the hostel felt like adulthood. No curfew, no warden, no register, just keys, responsibility, and the illusion of control. My parents didn't like it, but I sold it as focus and better study environment. My father didn't argue. That should have worried me. Instead, I mistook silence for trust. The people I fell in with weren't villains. That's important. Nobody twirled mustaches or spoke in code. They were students stressed, sarcastic, intelligent, bored. Some from money, some like me. All of us running from something. On campus, reputation spreads faster than truth. By mid-semester, certain professors had started looking at me differently. Attendance conversations became pointed. Internal assessments came with warnings. I wasn't accused of anything. That's how Indian institutions work. They don't accuse, they signal. Once after class, a professor called me aside. "You have potential," he said, adjusting his glasses, "but your circle, be careful." That word again, circle. I nodded like a good student and ignored the advice like a fool. Politics intensified when student elections approached. Suddenly, the administration needed examples. Messages needed to be sent. Certain groups were protected, others were expendable. I didn't realize then how visible I had become. A flat near campus. Irregular attendance. Friends from multiple groups. No obvious allegiance. In a system that thrives on labels, ambiguity is suspicious. At home, the tension was building too. My mother noticed everything. Late calls, short answers, changed tone. She didn't interrogate, she worried quietly, the way mothers do when they fear the truth. My father noticed silence. He asked fewer questions, which somehow made the house heavier. One Sunday during dinner he said, casually, "You're not distracted, are you?" I laughed too quickly. "No, why?" He looked at me for a long moment. "Because distractions are expensive," he said. "They don't always cost money." I remember feeling irritated, patronized, misunderstood. I also remember being wrong. The week before I got caught, things began slipping. A friend stopped answering calls. Another warned me vaguely to lie low. A notice went up about surprise checks in off-campus accommodations. Everyone joked about it. "They won't bother us." That sentence has ruined more lives than failure ever did. I told myself I was careful, that I wasn't reckless, that I wasn't like others. I was wrong again. The night it happened wasn't dramatic. No party. No chaos. No bravado. Just exhaustion. I was alone, scrolling through my phone, thinking about assignments I hadn't submitted and calls I hadn't returned. The flat felt unusually quiet, like it was holding its breath. That's when the knock came. Controlled. Certain. Final. And in that moment, before the uniforms, before the questions, before my father's voice cracked over the phone, I understood something terrifyingly clearly. This wasn't bad luck. This was momentum. Years of small compromises, finally arriving at one address. Mine. The police station didn't smell like fear, the way I'd imagined. It smelled like paperwork. That was my first shock, how ordinary it all was. No dramatic lighting, no shouting officers, no cinematic chaos. Just fans spinning lazily, benches worn smooth by decades of bodies, and files stacked so high they looked like they might collapse under their own weight. I was one more file waiting to be created. They made me sit on a plastic chair near the wall. No handcuffs, no lockup yet, just waiting, the most underrated form of punishment. Waiting gives your mind time to betray you. The officer who questioned me wasn't aggressive. He was efficient. He asked questions the way accountants audit expenses, detached, precise, already expecting lies. College, course, flat address, parents' occupation. Each answer felt like a nail being driven into a version of myself I could no longer protect. At one point he looked up and asked, "You know why this is serious, right?" I nodded. He leaned back. "Because this doesn't stay with you," he said. "It spreads." That sentence echoed in my head long after. My father arrived just before dawn. I knew it was him even before I saw his face, something in the way the room stiffened. Indian fathers carry authority differently. Even in a police station, even stripped of power, there's a dignity that refuses to collapse immediately. He didn't look at me at first. He spoke to the officer. Low voice, polite, controlled. I watched him from the corner of my eye, trying to read the cracks, trying to predict whether this would end in rage or silence. Silence won. When he finally turned to me, his eyes didn't accuse. They evaluated. That hurt more. "Is this true?" he asked. I nodded. No excuses, no explanations. None would have survived that room anyway. He closed his eyes briefly, just a second, but I saw it, the calculation, the reordering of his mental universe. "Do you understand what this means?" he asked. I said yes. I didn't, not fully, but I knew enough to feel small. What I didn't realize then was that the college already knew. Institutions in India don't wait for official communication. Information travels through informal channels faster than files ever could. By the time we left the station, my name was already circulating. not as a student, as a problem. The call came that afternoon. Not from a friend, not from a classmate, from the college administration. The irony wasn't lost on me. A calm voice requested my presence on campus the next morning. No details, no sympathy, just procedure. My father listened to the call on speaker. He didn't comment. That silence followed us home. That night the house felt unfamiliar. My mother tried to behave normally, tea, food, small talk, but her hands shook as she poured water. She didn't ask questions. That scared me more than interrogation ever had. When parents stop asking, it's because they're afraid of the answers. After dinner, my father called me into his room. He closed the door. That door closing sounded louder than any lock. "I didn't raise you like this," he said. Not angrily, not softly. Factually. I stood there like a child again, suddenly aware of how little distance adulthood had actually given me. "I gave you freedom because I believed you could handle it," he continued. "Do you know what hurts the most?" I shook my head. "That I defended you," he said. Repeatedly, to relatives, to colleagues, I said, "He's sensible, he won't cross lines." He paused. "And now I look like a fool." That sentence landed hard. Indian fathers don't talk about emotions. They talk about reputation, because that's how they experience love, through how the world reflects their children back to them. I tried to speak. He raised his hand. "Don't explain," he said. "Explanations are for people who don't know better." Then he said something I'll never forget. "From today, the system will decide who you are, not your marks, not your intentions." The next morning, campus felt hostile. Same buildings, same pathways, different air. People looked at me and then away. Messages stopped coming. Groups I used to sit with suddenly felt closed. No one wanted proximity. Guilt by association is real here. Outside the admin block, I waited like a defendant, which in a way I was. Inside, the room was full. Dean, 2 senior professors, a student welfare officer. No one smiled. They didn't ask how I was. They didn't need to. They spoke in careful language, the kind designed to sound neutral while delivering verdicts. "We are concerned about the institution's image," one of them said. There it was. Image. Not education. Not rehabilitation. Not context. Image. They spoke about disciplinary standards, zero tolerance, setting precedents. They reminded me of clauses I'd signed without reading. They used words like alleged while behaving like everything was already proven. At one point, I realized something chilling. This meeting wasn't about me. It was about control. They needed to show strength, to students, to parents, to themselves. I was convenient. One professor, the same one who'd warned me about my circle, finally spoke. "This is unfortunate," he said, almost kindly. "But associations matter, choices matter." I wanted to ask him why some associations were invisible while others were magnified. Why some students were warned quietly while others were paraded as examples. I didn't. In India, survival often means silence. The outcome was predictable. Suspension pending inquiry. Restricted campus access. Internal marks under review. No timeline. No clarity. Just limbo. When I walked out, my legs felt weak, not from fear, from humiliation. The campus I'd called home had expelled me without officially expelling me. At home, my father read the letter silently. Then he folded it carefully and placed it on the table. "This," he said, "is what power looks like." I looked at him. He continued, "They will protect themselves first, Always remember this. For the first time since everything began, his anger surfaced, not at me, but at the system. And somehow that was worse. That night I heard my parents talking behind closed doors. My mother crying quietly. My father speaking in low, controlled sentences. I didn't listen intentionally. But guilt has good hearing. I understood then that this wasn't just my collapse. It was theirs. Their routines. Their pride. Their imagined future. All rewritten by one police entry. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing something fundamental. I hadn't just lost my freedom. I had lost protection. From now on, every mistake would be interpreted through this lens. Every silence would look suspicious. Every opportunity would require explanation. In India, records don't fade. They follow. And this was only the beginning. Selective punishment isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with injustice slogans or obvious bias. It operates quietly through omissions, through who is questioned and who isn't, through files that exist and files that never get opened. I understood this only after I started noticing the absences. The inquiry committee called me in again a week later. Same room, same faces, different tone. They asked me to submit a written explanation, timeline, associations, clarifications. They wanted names, not directly, of course. They phrased it as context and environment. I gave them a version of the truth that wouldn't destroy other people. Maybe that was loyalty, maybe cowardice, maybe I still believed fairness existed somewhere in the process. That belief didn't survive the week. Outside the admin block, I ran into someone I knew well. Same batch, same circles, same off-campus life. He looked relaxed, normal, carrying a coffee like it was any other day. "Bro," he said quietly, pulling me aside, "are you okay?" I nodded. Then I asked the question that had been burning in my chest. "Did they call you?" He blinked. "No, why would they?" That's when it hit me. This wasn't a sweep. This wasn't about cleaning the campus. This was targeted. I started paying attention. Students whose parents were donors, untouched. Students whose relatives had political connections, invisible. Students active in approved activism, mysteriously absent from scrutiny. And students like me. Off campus, unaligned, replaceable. We were examples. One evening, a junior I barely knew messaged me. "Bye, please don't take my name if they ask. I'm on scholarship." I stared at the screen for a long time. I hadn't even considered nomming him. Fear travels faster than facts. By the next day, I realized something worse. The administration was leaking selectively, enough to scare people into silence, enough to isolate me. Not enough to implicate anyone powerful. A professor I respected once told me, quietly after class, "You need to understand how institutions survive. They don't remove rot, they remove exposure." That sentence explained everything. I learned about a student, let's call him R, who had been caught in a similar situation the previous year. His case never went beyond a warning. Why? Because his uncle sat on a university advisory board. Another student, openly known for far worse behavior, continued representing the college at inter-university events. Because optics matter. Punishment wasn't about behavior. It was about risk management. When I brought this up carefully, during one of the inquiry meetings, the response was chillingly polite. "We can't discuss other students," the dean said. "Each case is independent." Independent. That word again. It sounded so clean, so fair. It was neither. Outside, the campus narrative was already fixed. WhatsApp groups buzzed with half-truths. Someone exaggerated, someone speculated, someone added moral color. By the end of the week, I wasn't just accused, I was defined. People didn't ask what happened. They decided who I was. And the administration didn't correct them. Why would they? The story served them. At home, my father watched this unfold with a strange calm. "This is how power teaches lessons," he said one evening. "Not to you, to everyone watching." He wasn't angry anymore. He was resigned. That scared me more than his disappointment ever had. The real fracture between us happened a few days later. I came home furious after hearing that a protected student, someone I knew had been involved, had been given a leadership role in a college event. I slammed my bag down. "This is unfair," I said. "They know they all know." My father looked at me steadily. "Yes," he said, "and..." That single word stopped me. "And what?" I snapped. "You're okay with this?" He sighed. "I'm not okay with it," he said, "but I'm also not surprised. What did you think power was?" I said nothing. "You believed rules were universal," he continued. "They aren't, they're adjustable." Then he said something that hurt deeply. "The mistake wasn't that you broke a rule. The mistake was believing you'd be treated like everyone else." That was the moment our relationship shifted. Not because he blamed me, but because he stopped protecting my illusions. From that day on, he spoke to me differently. Less guidance, more realism, as if I were no longer his son to shield, but a man who had to understand consequences without cushioning. I missed the old version of him desperately. The inquiry dragged on. No resolution, no closure. Just enough pressure to keep me anxious, just enough delay to make me irrelevant. Eventually, one message came from the administration. "Your presence on campus is not advised until further notice." Not suspended. Not expelled. Erased. That's how selective punishment works. It doesn't scream. It slowly removes your oxygen. I sat on my bed that night, staring at the wall, realizing something painful. Some students graduate. Some students drop out. And some students are quietly pushed out of the frame, so the institution can pretend they were never there. I had become the third kind. The legal process doesn't feel like justice. It feels like waiting rooms. Rooms where time stretches, hope contracts, and your identity reduces to a file number written in blue ink. I learned quickly that courts aren't designed to resolve your life. They're designed to outlast your certainty. My lawyer was recommended by a family friend, middle-aged, calm, pragmatic, the kind of man who had seen enough cases to know that morality was irrelevant. "Don't expect fairness," he told us during the first meeting. "Expect procedure." That word again. Procedure. It followed me everywhere. Court visits became routine. Take leave from life. Travel early. Wait. Hear your name mispronounced. Stand, sit, stand again. Get a new date. Every visit carved a little more out of me. My mother started accompanying us sometimes. She never entered the courtroom, waited outside, clutching her purse like it might keep her grounded. She didn't ask questions. She didn't cry in front of me. Her silence became a weight I carried everywhere. My father attended every hearing. He never complained. That was his way of paying a debt he believed I had incurred. Back on campus, or what remained of my connection to it, life moved on without me. Photos appeared online, fests, convocations, smiling faces, professors I once knew posing with students who had been spared. I wasn't missed. That realization hurt more than exclusion. The administration had succeeded. They had removed the disturbance without a fight, no protest, No controversy, no headlines. Just quiet compliance. One afternoon, a classmate messaged me. "Bro, just wanted to check, are you okay?" I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "I exist," I typed. He didn't respond. That's how most conversations ended. The protected students thrived. I heard stories always indirectly: promotions, opportunities, foreign internships, LinkedIn posts about leadership and integrity. Once I ran into one of them at a cafe near campus. We made awkward eye contact. He smiled, embarrassed. "Take care, Yar," he said. That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement. Why would there be? The system had already forgiven him. At home, my father changed. Not visibly, but fundamentally. He stopped asking about my future plans, stopped suggesting exams, stopped mentioning careers. It was as if he had paused his expectations, waiting to see what version of me survived. One night I finally asked him, "Do you still believe in me?" He didn't answer immediately. "I believe in effort," he said eventually. "Belief comes later." That answer stayed with me. The breaking point came months later. A letter arrived from the college. Not disciplinary, administrative. They informed me that my enrollment would not be extended beyond the academic year due to non-fulfillment of requirements. Clean, bloodless. Legal. My father read it twice. Then he handed it to me. "This is the end of that chapter," he said. I nodded. But chapters don't end quietly when they collapse mid-sentence. That night, we argued for the first time since everything began. Not shouting. Something worse. Truth. "I ruined everything," I said. My father looked at me sharply. "No," he said. "You revealed everything." I didn't understand. "You revealed what institutions do when tested, what people do when scared, what power protects." He paused. "And you revealed what happens when privilege runs out." That stung. Because it was true. My mother finally spoke that night. "I used to pray you'd be successful," she said softly. "Now I pray you're safe." That was the moment I realized how completely the scale had shifted. Time passed. Cases dragged, rumors faded, new scandals replaced old ones. I started rebuilding quietly. New plans, new routines, smaller ambitions, more realism. My father and I didn't return to what we were. We became something else. Less affectionate. More honest. Bound by survival rather than expectation. Sometimes that's what adulthood actually is. Years later, much later, I walked past the old campus. New banners, new slogan, same promises. Students laughed near the gate. I didn't feel anger. Just clarity. Institutions don't care about you. They care about continuity. Families break and heal quietly. Power remains untouched. And growing up, I learned, isn't about rebellion. It's about understanding exactly where you stand and choosing what kind of damage you're willing to live with. People think time heals things. That's a comforting lie told by people who haven't had their names changed without consent. Mine didn't change legally, just socially. Years later, I learned that damage doesn't announce itself anymore. It becomes background noise, a low hum that follows you into interviews, relationships, silences. I stopped explaining my past. Not because I had forgiven myself, but because I'd memorized how quickly faces changed when I told the truth. I tried rebuilding. Different city, smaller room, lower expectations. On paper, it looked like progress. New job, new routine, no trouble. People described me as quiet, focused, serious. No one used words like promising anymore. I had become safe. That was the price. Sometimes late at night, I'd Google my old college. New principals, new deans, same language. Zero tolerance. Holistic growth. Safe campus. None of the people who had decided my fate were there anymore. Their LinkedIn profiles showed promotions, think tanks, awards, thought leaders in education. I wondered if they remembered me. I doubted it. Institutions forget faster than people do. My father aged suddenly. Not physically, internally. He never spoke about what happened again, not once, but certain things disappeared from our house forever. Family gatherings, loud opinions, prideful introductions. He stopped saying my son in conversations. He started saying my name. That distinction mattered. Once, years later, I overheard him talking to a relative on the phone. No trouble, he said. He keeps to himself. Keeps to himself. Like that was an achievement. Like that was the goal. I didn't confront him. Some disappointments don't need acknowledgement. They just need accommodation. My mother learned to lie effortlessly. To neighbors. To relatives. To herself. Work pressure, she'd say. Different path. He's doing fine. Fine became our family's safest word. It meant nothing and protected everything. Every once in a while, I'd run into someone from college. A wedding, a mutual friend's birthday, a chance encounter at an airport. They'd hesitate before speaking. Then say something rehearsed. Long time, man. Hope you're good. Those were crazy days, huh? They never asked how I was. Only if I was still around. The worst part wasn't losing opportunity. It was losing innocence about systems. I could never again believe in fairness without qualifiers. Never hear rules apply to everyone without mentally adding conditions. That kind of clarity doesn't make you wise. It makes you tired. I avoided ambition for a long time. Ambition requires belief, in effort, in reward, in visibility. Visibility had already hurt me once. So I stayed in the middle, not failing, not succeeding loudly, existing just enough to not attract attention. I learned how to shrink. One night, unable to sleep, I went through old photos. College festival, smiles, group shots. In every picture, I was laughing. I didn't remember that version of myself. He felt fictional, like someone I'd invented and then abandoned. I realized something unsettling then. That boy didn't disappear because of one mistake. He disappeared because no one fought for him. Not the institution. Not the system. Not even sometimes the people who loved him most. Years later, my father fell sick. Hospital corridors, medical forms, familiar helplessness. One evening, sitting beside his bed, he spoke about it finally. I thought being strict would protect you, he said quietly. I thought discipline was armor. I didn't respond. I didn't know how to fight institutions, he continued. I only knew how to raise children. His voice cracked just slightly. That was the only apology we ever exchanged. After he passed, people came and went. Condolences, rituals, closure. Life moved forward, as it always does, indifferent to unfinished conversations. At night, alone in the quiet he left behind, I understood something fully for the first time. Some consequences don't want redemption. They want acceptance. I'm not broken, but I am altered. I don't trust easily. I don't dream loudly. I don't believe that silence means safety, only that it delays attention. I've learned where power lives, and more importantly, where it doesn't. It doesn't live in fairness. It doesn't live in truth. It doesn't live in good intentions. It lives in distance. And I keep mine carefully now. Sometimes I imagine an alternate version of my life. One where I was protected. One where the rules bent kindly. One where the system decided I was worth saving. That version feels unreal. This one doesn't. This one wakes up every day and moves forward without asking for permission. Not free, just aware. And that, I've learned, is the kind of damage that never heals. Because it no longer hurts. It simply becomes who you are.